You're listening to Rookie Pirate Radio, the official anime and manga podcast for In Between Drafts. I'm John Agroni.
And I'm Travis Imus.
And today we are doing a manga recap of One Piece chapter 1077, titled Should Have Noticed Sooner. And hopefully you listening noticed as soon as you did that we discuss spoilers for the One Piece manga up until the chapter we're discussing. So if you have not yet read 1077, be sure to do so now. You can always read the latest chapters on the Viz website, which we link in the show notes. They're available for 3 weeks after the official release. And yeah, find down the show notes, check it out, and have a good time. And as always, we want to hear feedback from the listeners. We really do. Right, Travis? I mean, having you all in our Discord server, it's probably the second best thing about doing this podcast. You know what the first best thing is?
What's the first best thing?
Reading their emails, because our email address is rookiepirateradio@gmail.com. I'll say it again, rookiepirateradio@gmail.com. And you can hit us up there. Let us know if we got anything wrong, if you'd like to add to the discussion. Or again, come hang out in our Discord server. We have a special channel dedicated just to One Piece spoilers and discussion for the manga. And like I said, all that info, it's in the show notes. You know where to go. Travis, we have a lot to get to here. We have some One Piece.
So much to do. I'm just going to let you go, actually. Better
going to go through the main beats?
Yeah, let's do it.
Hopefully, I wrote down the main beats from memory. Hopefully, I wanted to see if I could do it. I wanted to see if if I don't even go through the chapter again, let me see if I can remember everything that happened. So if I forgot something,
how many times do you read a chapter usually?
In this case, I read the chapter just twice. So
okay.
Usually read it about 4 times, but I did it fewer times this week because I feel like it's not that heavy of a chapter. So I didn't have as much what's going on here. But let's see what happens. Okay. Title of this chapter, like I said before, Should Have Noticed Sooner. And there is a cover story, of course, which we'll probably talk about. We're kind of, I think, wrapping up the Germa 66 thing. But as far as the main beats go, Sentomaru gives out a warning that Egghead could go the way of Ohara. The Luffy, Lucci, Zoro, Kaku alliance heats up as Zoro recalls the weakness of the Lunarians. Speaking of Lunarians, or at least people who have similar Lunarian traits, elsewhere in the lab, Nami and Brook face off against S-Shark, and they are saved by the demonic eyebrow Sanji at the last second, who apparently is writing his own constitution. And then Usopp, Frankie, and Lilith have really taken a complete L in their fight against S-Snake. And last but not least, Shaka. He leaves the group to try to find and successfully find the Stella Vegapunk in the basement prison, only to get pistoled by the ever-elusive internet theory cannon fodder machine known as the Punk Records Saboteur. I feel like, Travis, for this discussion, we're probably going to talk a lot about that, but where do you want to start this week? I always love giving you the decision, put the pressure on you.
Since you brought up briefly the cover story, let's go ahead and start with that, because I think you're right. We're probably wrapping it up here, but we're wrapping it up 32. In a way that makes me wonder if we're going to get a surprise later on.
I've seen some speculation that there are people who think that Caesar and Judge are going to come into Egghead at some point if they aren't around already, which I find, I guess, kind of interesting. Personally, I'd prefer if we don't do that, but yeah, I'm open to anything.
I would agree. It sounds like just a little too much chaos for this very chaotic story at this point. But it is interesting that this again is the cover story that has weaved its way into current events, and now we have an actual picture of the man who is the center of this story arc right there at the top of the cover story. But I do enjoy my favorite part, because I love talking about the art. My favorite part is seeing Reiju, and I always forget the other one's name, so I'm pretty sure that's Yeonju back there. They've just been standing there the entire time this flashback has been happening, which you usually don't think about time passing in One Piece when we do the flashbacks, because it's usually almost happening parallel to the actual story. But no, these two have just been fighting, yelling at each other about their pasts, and these two have just been standing there staring, emotionless, and it's perfect. It's great.
I think it's Ichiji in the background.
Is that Ichiji?
I think so. I think Yanji's the one whose hair is a little bit more slicked back, right?
I'm not going to argue with you because they're all the same to me right now.
It's
they're
not
all
in color.
blur. They're all, yeah. They suck anyway. It's fine.
But yeah, so to what you're saying, I mean, yeah, we're on volume 32 of An Emotionless Excursion, and we've been going through this flashback. And I kind of like that there is this sort of like realization that they have that can spur on the current events that would bring them into the story, which is like, you know, we've had this grudge, you and me, Judge, for years and years and years of who was second best, who was the best or whatever. And finally, they kind of come to this understanding that, you know what, it's Vegapunk is the reason that our lives have not turned out the way that we want them to. I mean, Caesar, obviously, things really went to crap for him, you know, working for Kaido. And then, you know, Judge, obviously, everything's been really, really rough for him as well in terms of his kingdom being on the outs right now. I don't know. It's a bit immature. I mean, I feel like Judge has really himself to blame for trusting Big Mom, but you know, that's another thing, I guess.
If there's anything that we've learned about these two science men over the course of the past several years, is that they are not men who want to take responsibility for their own actions. They want the credit for their achievements, but they do not want to take responsibility. So that it's completely in character for them.
I'm certainly like, you know, interested in the idea of the Straw Hats running into this group again, you know, this group picking up Caesar along the way and having a reuniting of Sanji and his family could be interesting, and having a real conflict between the Straw Hats and them because of them harboring Vegapunk, if that is where we're going. But yeah, I won't be surprised if we move on to a new cover story here in the next month or so.
I'm honestly kind of ready for it. I'm not going to lie. It feels... I think we checked this before if it was the longest one, and it wasn't, but it feels like it's the longest one.
I think we covered that it's like the longest consecutive, but at least like, I mean, it's not always 100% consecutive. We get, you know, color spreads and things like that in between. But the only other thing I was going to mention with this is that for the next cover story, I'm kind of curious what we're going to get, because I doubt it's going to be anything that's like New World focused, in the sense that, you know, what's going on with like Blackbeard, Law, Cross Guild. I feel like all that stuff is going to be a little bit too, you know, pressing for us to get a cover story. So I'm wondering if we're going to get a Yamato and Momonosuke cover story next. And they probably just couldn't do that before because Emotionless Excursion really overlapped with Wano. So that's my number one bet. I don't know if there's any other that you think might be a little bit more likely.
We technically have new bounties, so we're due for new decks of the world. But that you know,
I feel like the time has passed, hasn't it?
I mean, at the end of the day, when you get down to it, we know what's going on in a lot of spots in the world, which is usually what decks of the world is actually supposed to be. Is not everybody reacting to the bounties like it looks like. It's supposed to be, oh hey, Vivi's doing this. Oh hey, you know, Dalton's doing this over in Drummond. But we know what's going on all over the place now. So it kind of, it feels like it would almost be perfunctory.
Right. And we're not going to get the Grand Fleet, you know, into the story like that next. I feel like they're going to be coming into the story like for real, for real. I think the characters we're longest away from seeing that are at that top of the list in terms of importance would be Yamato and Momonosuke and the Scabbards. And we probably need a cover story to get across what they're up to, because the Wano stuff, I think, is going to come into play. And I think there is going to be a lot going on with Momonosuke in particular that's going to inform what happens in the story later. I'd be surprised if we don't get that cover story at all, like, which I guess is possible. But it would just be weird if we just, you know, fast tracked or jump cut right to like where those characters have progressed without really getting to show. It's like if we had jumped to Kobe and Helmeppo, you know, without Garp and his mentorship with them. It would have been weird.
Yeah, no, you're right. It would be weirder to check back in with them later, which we have to do. We have to be going back, like, not even if we're not physically going back to Wano, but like
it's less than optional.
Yeah,
that's for sure.
We have to be doing something with them. So that seems pretty optimal. I will offer NL Return from Space. I don't know.
Oh, what if he's a traitor?
What if? I mean,
speaking of, I do have like a new. I think I've kind of shifted my thinking on the traitor at this point, based on what this chapter has brought us. I don't want to jump ahead, but you know,
do we want to? It is the most important thing that's happened.
It's what people came to listen to.
Yeah,
I mean,
we just want to jump to it.
I mean, it would be really quick to go over. I don't have much to say about like, okay, Sentomaru is setting the stakes. Right. It's the whole purpose of that is to be like what happened to Ohara can happen here. We already had that inkling, but I think it's just Oda reminding the readers that there is a timer on what's going on. It's just heightening the tension. And then the rest of it is a mix of like some of the battles are, you know, going to their next phase. We have the comedic relief with Zoro not realizing who the Lunarians are. We could talk about that a little bit, but I don't have much to say about that. I don't have much to say about, I think it's cool that Nami got like a fun moment against S Shark and was, pretty effective in fighting S Shark compared to like Usopp and Lilith just getting rolled and Frankie.
It's nice. It's nice to see some of them not getting completely rolled. I mean, this is the first L that the crew has properly taken as a unit since I think the time skip. Before the time skip ? So it makes sense that it is once again at the hands of the Pacifista Project. But it's nice to see Nami like. This isn't actually a kid. I can fight, you're not just completely falling apart.
It's a struggle for her. Although the upskirt thing, completely unnecessary, Oda. What the heck, man?
It's a well-established Odaism. Like if I had to be honest with you, if I had to be entirely honest with you, this is one of those things where I feel like it's a panel he drew for the purposes of the anime more than being a pervert. So let's be honest.
That's nice of you to.
Let's be
Sure.
honest.
Yeah.
He's based, but also kind of a pervert. But this is one of those things where in animation, I can absolutely see this being more of an upswing rather than an upskirt. I mean, the problem is the costumes to begin with, but. Yeah, I could see this being something that
we had somebody who could draw the costumes,
who could draw the pants, instead of removing the pants from all of the women. Yeah, okay, he's a pervert. I'll admit it. I mean, I respect that he's honest about it. That's
I think the biggest revelation I got from this, not real revelation, but I think confirmation of something we suspected, is that a weakness of the Seraphim is the sea. The bubbles that Lilith produces do actually weaken them, which we were obviously hoping that would be the case. And sure enough, I still am kind of clinging to the idea that they might run out of the green blood, but we'll see if that pans out. It's still absolutely possible because you have to be able to hit them properly, and there are all kinds of extraneous factors. Unlike pacifistas, these at least one of these seraphim has a stone cold personality that's going to be hard to deal with a lot of our decently natured pirates. I would like Usopp to have this gun by the end of the arc, though. Thank you very much. Okay.
If we're going to upgrade from a slingshot at any time, a devil fruit user beating gun sounds good to me.
This is a very Usopp weapon, isn't it?
It's like my first reaction reading it was, hey, this sounds like something we could just put in one of Frankie's hands, right? Like, and he even uses the bubble later on.
Right.
But the more I think about it, the more I'm like, no, it's a gun. Give it to Usopp.
Yeah.
Or
he would invent it himself.
Yeah, try to adapt the bubble technology into one of his weapons because it makes perfect sense. Yeah, with Frankie's help, and it makes perfect sense for him. It's a long range weapon, and it doesn't necessarily instantly defeat someone, but it does even the score, which a character like Usopp needs a lot more.
You'll need that in the Blackbeard fight. Because without that, he doesn't.
If we're doing matchups, Van Augur, right?
Yeah.
If you're matching that up, Usopp has observation hockey, so that's going to be a factor in if you want to have that kind of matchup. But something that's going to actually even the playing field, I think, is just necessary for our non-Devil Fruit users. Nami got Zeus. Sanji has his little eyebrow trick now, as I'm sure you noticed in the panels. Yeah, he can go
demonic, and become like the version of the Germa 66.
Yeah, he can go Germa.
The eyebrows switch places, yeah.
Yeah.
Which that's why I was kind of mentioning. So we Zoro finally confirms to the characters that these are based on Lunarians. It's a little weird that Shaka doesn't seem to know the flame weakness. Because Shaka is standing right there, and I didn't really get this, but they're kind of talking about this and be like, we don't know how to fight them, and Shaka doesn't say anything about it. Zoro is the one who's just like, oh, this is like when I fought King, and King, like when the flame goes out, he becomes faster, but no longer invulnerable, right? And so everyone's like, Rob Lucci is kind of like, this is great, like he's being like weirdly cooperative, but then of course like Zoro was just like, oh, and they look exactly the same, and they're just like, I think that's like the fun nod, of course, to the title of the chapter, but I think that the title of the chapter, I think, is also a double meaning, a typical Oda fashion, meaning like, I think Oda is saying like, everybody, the traitor is obvious. Why are people not getting this? I think
right.
is him
Or Shaka should have noticed someone behind him sooner, even.
That's true. But also just Shaka should have noticed that the Lunarian weakness was a certain way. It is very suspicious that he didn't just tell them that. He's just standing there not helping.
Shaka is one of the weirdest characters that we've encountered in a long time, because it's so hard to get a read on him. Like it's one of those things.
He's wearing a mask until now.
That doesn't help either.
Are we about to see his real face?
Watch, it's a robot face or something,
right? Because he got shot in the head, and so I know I'm jumping ahead again, but I just think that like that's not going to kill him, because probably he doesn't have a real head.
I have a rant ready for the did it kill him thing. But he's such a, because you're right, I would reckon up until this point, there's a vested interest in not telling the Straw Hats everything they need to know about the Seraphim. You can volunteer the green blood information, because that doesn't really give them a way to exploit that. You can volunteer all kinds of stuff, but volunteering the weaknesses, especially from the Lunarian bits in them, that at this point sounds like it's critical information. It seems like it is something that should have been disclosed, because it's the easiest way to make sure that the Straw Hats can actually protect the Stella. The only real possible explanation that I can really narrow down to is each of these Vegapunk satellites, and it's super important to remember this, are just pieces of one person's personality. So to assign like a full rational process to each individual satellite feels like we're trying to project a full character onto them, whereas we really can't. Like, it's clear, for example, that Shaka has been standing around here this whole time, and he's not really paying attention to the battle. He's been trying to figure out where the Stella is. He's doing calculations in his head. He's thinking that through, because that's his actual objective. They're gonna go fight the Seraphim, whatever, they'll deal with it. It's Monkey D. Luffy. I know that he has weird stuff. So maybe that's what it is just we're trying to ascribe a full character to someone who is just literally a fraction of a character.
Well, that leads me into my new, like, the theory that I feel most comfortable championing at this point. I think it has to do with what causes Shaka to think that Vegapunk is in the basement, which we find out is I'll double check the name of it. It's like the Devil Fruit Laboratory, something like that.
The old Devil Fruit research lab.
Devil Fruit research lab,
which,
basement floor.
What? You can't just leave that, right? Like, that's where the secrets are, man. That's where all the good stuff is.
Well, that's what got me thinking about the connection between the Lunarians, between Sanji, who doesn't have flames, but he's like resistant to flames in a similar way. There have been theories for a long time, I think, that like Sanji is like a descendant from Lunarians or something like that, and it has to do with like how he's so, it's not just Judge's, research potentially, right? It could also be, the fact that he can like pick himself back up together even when he breaks his like body. The anime has been showing like the Sanji versus Queen fight, and in the anime you really see he takes some heavy hits. I think the manga like didn't really get that across as much. Like, you see him kind of move his neck a bit, but it wasn't as dramatic. The anime is showing him straight up like his every bone in his body gets broken and he just snaps out of it like it's fine. And that reminds me a lot of what the Seraphim are kind of doing, where they're just kind of shaking all this stuff off in a very similar way. And we have the Judge connection right there. I don't think it's a leap to say that there's some similar shenanigans going on around here. Considering where Judge would have gotten really the inspiration to make his children the way they are, I don't see why that can't be connected to the Seraphim as well. So lots to consider there. But in terms of like the theory that I'm behind at this point, because when I first read it, I was kind of confused, because I was like, I thought that it was hard for me to tell if Vegapunk could see the person who would shoot Shaka. Like, I know they were silhouetted, but I couldn't tell if like he could see them but didn't know who they were. But I think like I messaged you about this and you're like, oh, he was probably just like, just probably didn't see him. But it's unclear at the very end. Like, he has a horrified expression on his face. I think because Shaka got shot, or because he sees who it is. But we can talk about that too. I don't know if you want to just jump right to it.
The only really other thing that I want to offer up until this point, and unless we want to discuss the full articles of the Sanji Tushin, is I love that literally one chapter away from deciding we're teaming up with Rob Lucci and Kaku, they've had their sandwich moment. That's my favorite thing ever. We've got all this stuff going on, but Oda made a point. We got to have the no crusts moment for our new allies, like we did with Law. Like there's just something about the Straw Hats goofiness that it works like its own gravitational force. And the second
it's
that
like
you
it's
give
like
in,
a secondary devil fruit power.
it is the
Joy Boy. It really is. Isn't
now
it?
now that you've brought it up, I mean, there's literally nothing that says it can't like that. Everybody becomes kind of a goober when they're around Luffy, and they've like embraced him even temporarily. Like, you know, he kind of makes them a little bit goofier. Like maybe that is. It's there's a theory. I'm going to go on a tangent. I'm sorry. There's a theory that way back before we started Egghead Island, we were just in that transitory period between Wano and Egghead, and Jinbei thought for a minute that Nami had Conqueror's Haki because of just how powerful she was on the boat, and there was a kind of a joking theory. I don't think it was anybody who was positing this was really very serious, but it was funny to consider that Luffy just simply manifests her own power via the Nika fruit out of his own fear of her authority. like she doesn't.
There've been a bunch of theories like that. Like that, the reason she's able to beat him up is like specific. There's specifically something about her as a person. Like there have even been people who speculated like her lineage has something to do with it, because that's still something up in the air.
I think it's completely centered around the gag. Like it can happen that way because Luffy trusts her enough to know that she's not actually going to hurt him, and that then subsequently manifests itself for the Nika fruit's true objective, which is comedy. So,
but also it helps the manga make Luffy all the more endearing because he's the toughest person in the crew, but he gets beat up by the weakest person in the crew. At least early on in the run. Yeah.
The Straw Hats have two captains. They have the on the Thousand Sunny captain and the off the Thousand Sunny captain. When you're on the Thousand Sunny, Nami's the captain of the ship. When you're off, that's why he wants to get off so fast, is because then he's in charge again. That's kind of how it always feels like. But I do love, you know, it, and I call it the sandwich moment because it's my favorite Trafalgar Law moment when they're all discussing their plan, and Sanji's like, I'm gonna make everybody sandwiches, and he's like, wait, we're doing strategizing, and they're already distracted, and then he just completely unprompted goes, no crusts on mine, and realizes that he's now been sucked into their nonsense. And I think the you should have noticed sooner moment, complete with Luffy joining in, is Rob Lucci and Kaku's moment, and that's great because I think we can officially put it to bed. We're not going to have rematch number 2. We're not going to have this whole thing where they try to betray them later. I think
I doubt
I think
that.
we're done. I think we're done in its separate ways after this, but like it's not going to be a thing. You know what I mean? But anyway,
it's just like giving them a function or like helping establish that, you know, Luffy and Zoro having other characters to bounce off of, pun intended. But okay, that leads to the theory that everyone's been discussing. Everyone's been curious. I think the most popular theory out there at this point is probably S Flamingo. And I know last week you and I kind of like wavered a bit on our own theories. I think yours, not to represent it without your say so, but you know, you were coming at it from like world government has somebody, a saboteur, whoever the traitor is, could be doing their thing. I know a lot of people still think like it could be Atlas, because Atlas is a moon of Saturn, and Saturn being the Gorosei, like, you know, people are gonna do their thing. People are gonna do their Reddit. But then also there are theories that, you know, it's Punk Records itself. You know, it's the actual like lab has like become sentient. But the most popular theory right now, I think, is now that the Shaka truthers have seen him get shot, have switched over to the camp of S Flamingo, probably, which is a theory that I think was mostly popularized by Morge, much to my chagrin. But he was one of the first to really like put that out there. The idea that I've been of the idea that there's been a 7th Vegapunk. I'm feeling less confident about that right now, but there's been another idea that there's another Seraphim out there who is Don Flamingo or Doflamingo, excuse me, and based on Doflamingo. But some people have said, oh, maybe he's he's got Tenryubito DNA, so that makes him like have a higher authority level or something like that. People think that the way he marches, like the sound effect, it's something we saw with Eam, by the way. Just putting that out there. But a lot of people think that like nobility, that sort of like heavy march, is reminiscent of Flamingo. Me personally, this is where I'm at. I was reading some of the early chapters, some of the chapters in between Mono and Egghead, when we first meet the Seraphim, because I think like this chapter in particular, it really stuck out to me how we keep getting these hints. Like the name of it is like, you should have noticed sooner. I was trying to think, well, what was the first hint? What was the first clue? And I think the first one, and it keeps popping up, is that the Seraphim keep defying orders, right? So like S-Bear, he gets sent back to Egghead because he was a problem child. We've seen multiple instances where, the Seraphim start to blow up the lab, even though, they're not supposed to. When we first meet, like when Kobe is like commanding the Seraphim, they don't listen to his orders. So there seems to be like a breaking of that rule that's been happening over and over again. And so I keep coming to this idea that the Seraphim have been behind this entire thing. And that I kind of have this idea that like, because I keep struggling with, why is this happening in Cypherpole? Why are they being captured but not killed? And I just have this idea that like, maybe they don't want to kill anybody. Maybe they just want everybody to stay on the island. Maybe they don't want to leave the island. Maybe they just want to like keep everybody there. Like I just have this idea that it's something really childlike like that. I don't know. I'm still kind of like working it out in my head, but I just like this idea that it's all the Seraphim kind of working together. Maybe I also like the idea that like it is Caribou who like shoots Shaka and is like working with the Seraphim. I think that, that's plausible enough. But what do you think? Any of this sounds mildly interesting?
So so what I've been calling the punk records theory, or what we talked about a few weeks ago about like maybe last week even with the poneglyphs changing something about someone's programming here. I've been referring to that in the Discord as the Terminator theory. And what you're saying is we've gone full Terminator 2 and the Seraphim themselves have changed objectives. Is that my okay? They're
commanding themselves, and I think it's something very innocent. Like literally the CP0 or the CP5, CP6 agents were trying to leave, and they're like, "You can't leave yet. Like you're gonna stay here." Like it's something very like horror movie. I don't know. I just like that idea of like their motivation being kind of innocent because they're kids,
so
but also they're like stone cold. Because we haven't seen them kill anybody, have we?
No, unless one of them shot Shock. But
which we don't know yet.
Which we don't know. It's kind of like. Do you think they're playing then? All of this combat right now is just a game.
It's literally called a game. It's called a death game, but it could be one of those things where they just want to fight and have fun and like I just keep. There's something about it. Like Esper is literally called a problem child. They have the temperaments of like children, and like nothing else seems to make satisfying sense to me, because this idea that like Vegapunk or like that there's another clone, or that it's just there's like even the Flamingo thing, which I think could work into this, like that he could be the head of it and that could like crystallize it. I just like the idea of like if we had like a flashback and we started to see how all this stuff was happening, like what was happening behind the scenes. I think this could come together in a way that's kind of satisfying. There aren't a lot of theories out there that I find satisfying right now, personally.
I have to say, I like this idea because I had not considered that at all, that the Seraphim themselves had just gone full Children of the Corn. That's an interesting take, because it fits. I like it because it fits. Like I was saying before, it's hard to get a read on Shaka. It's hard to get a read on a lot of the other satellites. We've only spent so much time with the other satellites. I think that's why people are gravitating towards like Shaka specifically, because when we get right down to the brass tacks of it, he is the Vegapunk who has spoken the most. He is the most framed, even compared to the Stella. He's the one who's bringing us the big lore revelations. He's the one that sets up the "I think I'm gonna die" kind of thing. Like he is very much weird, and I think that at this point other satellites become a little bit more scrupulous, especially since we can account for everyone's presence now. But again, the Seraphim have been all over the place. They're moving very quickly and have the capacity to. I think it fits.
Because I'm wondering too, like, what happened 2 months ago? 2 months ago, the warlords were set out by the world government, right? So that the Seraphim could do their thing. I think that basically tracks with like when the reverie was happening, how much time happened between the raid in Onigashima, I always say it wrong, and the Straw Hats like sailing to Egghead. You could work out that it's been roughly 2 months or so. And I have this idea, this inkling that something went wrong with the Seraphim when the world government was like destroy the warlords, and they have some kind of connection there, because like they're literally like replacing the warlords, and like I could just see it. That is like a very clone thing, and if they want to be the warlords, I guess like there could just be this sense that they want to be the real thing. I just keep coming to this idea of like Toy Story, and like they want to be alive, they want to be played with. Just this very genuine, pure sort of thing. Kind of contrasts with like how they're kind of heartless, or they seem heartless. But then you even see like a Snake in this, who has like a personality, who has that, the Boa Hancock tsundere kind of thing. And I would argue that if you had an S Flamingo, that's why you would have like a kind of conniving Seraphim who's sort of, trying to change, the rules and be in charge. I don't know. It's a little half baked, I know.
I really like this because now I'm thinking about it, and you mentioned like sentience and personhood. Well, what did we have not 10 chapters ago where we were talking about clones and Vegapunk saying very straightforward, this is as human as you can get. People are going to say otherwise, but it's true. And when we see Stussy, and vampire wings aside, like. Yeah, she's a full human clone of a known character within One Piece.
Right.
The Seraphim are also that. They're more than that, but they are also that. So, if we're extrapolating out themes and stuff, then yeah, you could absolutely go, yeah, no, they're becoming human. They're becoming aware.
And one of the things that like prompted it too was because I was trying to think of like why did Shaka think to go down there? It was during the fight with the Seraphim, and I think there was something about like he was thinking about like the experimenting on Albert, the king, aka, and watching them fight and watching them react to the fight and do all that stuff. And then he goes down to the old Devil Fruit Research Lab, which is where they were probably made, right? And so I wonder if he has this idea of like maybe the Seraphim are the one who took Vegapunk and like have him like where they were born, or like have him in an area where like they wouldn't even think that he would be, because it's not supposed to be like a prison. It's like where they contained the Seraphim essentially. Like I think that he pieces it together that the Seraphim are actually behind this on their own, and that's what leads to this. But I don't think that means that he's shot by a Seraphim. Like maybe, but because Doflamingo used a pistol, but yeah.
I need to take an L here because as you were saying that, it dawned on me. Oh, yeah. Zoro explaining that King is Albert and connecting that back to Vegapunk is the spark that did the Columbo thing for Shaka. I literally did not connect these two conversations whatsoever. Like, oh, yeah, no, duh, we did experiments on a guy downstairs. I bet that's where they are. Like, that didn't even occur to me until just now. Oh my goodness gracious. Of course, that makes sense.
I'll double check, because I'm trying to remember when he says he's going to leave. Because I'm looking at it and I see, they are talking about it. They have you should have noticed sooner. And then, after that, he's like, "Where are you going? I have an idea of where the Stella might be." Yeah.
No, that's a correct. I think that's a correct read of how those events are actually supposed to play out. So, I don't know how I didn't notice that, but yeah, I think I gotta say, like you say this is half baked, but I like where this is going because it fits. It fits the clues that we have, and I think it's a satisfying thing because Oda has had the Seraphim kicking around as a plot point for a good long while. They've been kind of this secret threat in the storyline forever, and it stands to reason that they could be the big deal here that we're not noticing. That's not bad. I like that.
I'm kind of curious too. Like we don't see the whole pistol. Is it a pistol? It looks like the barrel of a pistol, but it could be the barrel of a rifle. I just thought pistol because of it's so small in the frame, but yeah.
Man, I gotta tell you, I stared at these little panels trying to like make out a silhouette, trying to make this make sense the whole time. And I gotta be honest with you, outside of the fact that this is a very jarring panel, like the actual shot hitting Shaka, that's such a jarring panel to me, because we don't usually see, or I guess I should say, when we see a bullet hit with this kind of like impact that Oda's drawing here, that usually means something. That usually means something has shifted into a far more serious situation.
This is your rant?
Yeah, we're going to open. I guess we should open up the rant now.
Don't forget to mention that it looked like this one Law got shot like 9 times.
Yeah,
and survived.
Okay, so that's where my rant is going here, right? Okay, so we know that getting a death to stick in One Piece is very difficult. It's extremely difficult. It has been this way
in Oda's view.
It has been this, and to me, this is the soapbox I'm going to get on. To me, I don't care, and this is why I don't care. Because number one, Luffy doesn't kill, and we know why Luffy doesn't kill. There's idealistic reasons why Luffy doesn't kill that fit his character. But also, not killing characters allows Oda to do the things that he does, which is a lot of times giving us cover stories, giving us more world building, allowing characters to re-enter and exit the story as needed. It gives us a world that is, more filled with life than a lot of other series that bring in a character for an arc and then kill them. And I know that frustrates a lot of people because they want the stakes raised. They want to know that people can die and all this stuff. And the only thing that I can say to that is when people die in One Piece, it matters more. It matters more. That's why everyone's flashback is centered around the loss of someone. It's why when that like Ace's death becomes the crux that prompts the time skip. And it's the lowest point in Luffy's entire life, and we're still thinking about it 10 years later beyond. The death of Whitebeard at the same time. It's these moments that are supposed to be, because at the end of the day, people do die in One Piece. And when it comes, it's going to matter. So when we have panels like this that are filled with impact, they're either going to be a fake out or they're going to be something very drastic has shifted in the story. And in this case, all of that ranting aside, there's absolutely no way that this guy died. There's none. He's got to be a robot. There's got to be a backup in Punk Records. Or he gets up and says, 'tis but a scratch. I don't know. This is one of those where it's like, there's no stinking way. There's no way that he just got shot in the head and the shooter's running off and that's it. And we've resolved this. Because my guy is wearing a mask. And when you're wearing a mask, the only question everybody has is, what's that guy's deal under that mask? I got to see under that mask. So I fully sympathize with people's frustrations on this. is my roundabout way to say normally I'm good with it, but this is shocking and it's very tension building. But boy, howdy, is he definitely not dead.
I think that's a safe bet. I'm with you there. Yeah, I guess.
I don't know who did it. I can't tell you.
You don't like the S Flamingo theory?
I like the S Flamingo theory too, because it would, especially when you offer stuff up, you go like, oh, well, if he's a celestial dragon by blood, does that override the command structure? That sounds like something Vegapunk wouldn't be stupid enough to do. But on the other hand, he built the rest of these, so I mean, yeah, maybe he is stupid enough to do it. No scientist takes no STEM lord takes an ethics course, so here we are, but. But at the same time, it's one of those things where, I mean, if I could be so bold, Doflamingo is way more vicious than this. Would he shoot a guy in the head and run off? That doesn't sound like Doflamingo to me.
You think this guy is running off? Whoever's shooting?
I can't tell is the problem. To be honest, it's again, I've been staring at this panel and I think I've gaslit myself into a whole bunch of different things.
Huh.
But it's one of these things where I guess it wouldn't be so quiet. Maybe like why would he shoot from a distance when he could just get up real close and shoot him, and gloat and do a jump scare. I don't know. It's again trying to ascribe personalities that are full and realized to entities that are by design not meant to be. So it's very tricky for me. I like the S Flamingo theory. I like your theory a lot here, where S Flamingo or not, the Seraphim gaining a certain level of personhood, because that's going to make things very difficult for Luffy as well. Because we're no longer dealing with just robots. We're no longer dealing with, you think about how he was fine completely punching out Cop Kuma, based because it's just a robot, even though it was Bonnie's emotions, messing him up. To flip around and the Seraphim have personalities. They're people. They're human, so to speak. That's going to do something to Luffy's reactions to things, because he's going to have to ask himself, aren't these guys also oppressed now? If I think about this way for long enough. So I really like those ideas. At this point, I don't know. I think, Seventh Vegapunk probably doesn't work. I think it depends really on whether or not the Stella recognized it. I think if they are coming down the stairs, Stella recognized them eventually. But man, I love that this is such a complicated mystery, but I really hope we're about to get the answer to it.
It's definitely one of those things where, like, every week, the more clues we get, I think the less information or the less clear it becomes, because it really seemed like Shaka seemed like such a plausible, like, oh yeah, that fits great. And it took like a week or two for that to be like, I don't really fit anymore. And so it keeps changing. I almost find it kind of masterful in a way.
Right.
But at this point, I'm like, all right, let's just kind of get to it. I'm ready for it to just tell us what the deal is, because this has gone on long enough. You made your point, Oda. You're good at this, but I mean, let's see. It's time to, we're at the stage where you have to show your cards, and all bets are off, I guess.
Yeah. Do you think? I'm going to speak a little bit more esoterically. Do you think, regardless of what the solution to the puzzle here is, will they be able to stick the landing on this? Because mysteries are very hard to do.
I mean, Oda's done it before. And I think that what he's been able to do, he's been able to, one of my favorite things that he ever threw at us was the clues and everything about the going merry being what talked to Usopp. There was that whole mystery in Skypiea, and the way that he wove that into not just a revelation, but something that was crucial to Usopp's character and the story of the Straw Hats. I have faith that he really thinks that stuff through. And that was something similar that was it was something that he had set up just at the tail end of the chapter before the arc beforehand. And he didn't have to really overdo it. It just still really fit that arc of the story. And here, that's why I keep coming to the idea that this should be a revelation that matters. If it's something that propels the story forward, what does that look like? Where does it put the characters next? It can't just be a sort of we have to heighten the stakes so that the Straw Hats can't just leave Egghead yet. I feel like there's got to be more to it. There's got to be some sort of wrinkle to what the Straw Hats are going to do and their relationship with Vegapunk and all of that stuff, I would hope would be informed by what's happening to them right now. That's why I really like the idea of the Seraphim kind of becoming pirates or something, or going off on their own and being changed and doing their own thing in this unstoppable force, of course, joining the Straw Hat Grand Fleet. No, I'm just joking, but kind of creating this crisis for the world government and putting them on the back foot. Because I think we've talked about this before, where it feels like the world government is getting a little bit too much with the Seraphim. They're becoming a little bit too stacked, I guess, against the rogue powers. And I like the idea of the Seraphim, kind of disrupting their plans a bit. And I'm also still kind of thinking about the tournament arc we talked about last week and weeks prior about, what's going to be the next major threat for the Straw Hats before they get to Elbaf, if that's what happens next. I would hope that we have some kind of, pushing the needle on that, because all the other Worst Generation / Emperor characters are having these huge fights. And we just kind of have Luffy just, goofing around in Gear 4th on Egghead, and I just hope it's all leading somewhere interesting. And by the way, I forgot to mention this before. I think the reason that the Saboteur shoots Shaka from a distance is because Shaka is about to let Vegapunk out. And so I think it was just a matter of like having to stop him from doing that, which doesn't necessarily mean that he wants to kill Shako, but maybe just incapacitate him, knowing that shooting him in the head wouldn't kill him. That's kind of why I keep coming back to the idea that like if this is like a Seraphim thing, that I don't know if they actually want to kill people, or if they have like an aversion to that. It would be because I like what you said. I think it was Oda who said that once in an SBS, right? That like Luffy doesn't kill because he wants, I might be butchering this, but he wants characters, even villains, to have another chance at achieving their dreams. Like that to me was like such an Oda thing. I forget which SBS that was too.
It was very early on, but it's the idea of Luffy doesn't have to kill his enemies because he can beat their dreams. He breaks their will. He breaks their will, and that's more powerful. And again, it's mostly for narrative purposes. It's the comic book principle, right? But when you get right down to it, that's really what it is. The entire race for the One Piece is a battle of wills. You can do the Blackbeard thing and kill everyone in your way, but that doesn't shore up your own will. So
Eustace Kid the same way, because he was known for that. Up to the time skip of he was Luffy, but more of a murderer, more of like his bounty was higher. I think it was like 500 million berries at that point, or something. Maybe it was 300 million, because he just straight up just killed people constantly. Yeah,
Luffy's will is stronger than the easy way out. That's kind of how I always think about it, and I like that about him because it's not strictly a moral or a good. It's not saying, oh, we don't kill people, because again, people do die in One Piece. It's very much just, hey, I don't have to kill people. I'm stronger willed than that. I'm going to take the hard way out. I'm going, and it's the same rules that he plays by. As long as he can keep getting up, he can keep fighting, and he can keep going rounds, and he ascribes that same respect to the people he fights.
So you're saying silhouetted guns don't kill people. Saboteurs with silhouetted guns and probably heavy boots.
Absolutely fail to kill people.
fail to kill, robotic life forms or whatever the satellites are supposed to be, I guess.
Yeah, is that blood or is that oil coming out of him, do you think?
Good question. I mean, that's the thing is like he's going to remove the mask, right? And I think that they do have like synthetic, because like Lilith kind of looks more like a person than a lot of the other ones who work too. So my assumption has been that Shaka has like a face, and I want to see what Shaka looks like.
You want to see what's under the mask?
What if Shaka looks like King? What if?
Oh, plot twist. He has that's why he figured it out, because he has Seraphim.
I don't know.
Seraphim bits. That would be, I mean, you almost need him to look like something. Like you'd need him to look like someone, right?
That would kind of be important. Like, why wear a mask? The narrative theory is that a character wears a mask to hide something. Why would he hide his face? And yeah, I mean, it's unclear to me why he would wear a mask at all. Pythagoras and Edison kind of look more like robots, but they sort of, maybe it's because he wants to hide. At being the good character he is, he wants to hide his expression in order to give off this air of logic and moral uprightness and hide his expressions. I don't know. They could do whatever with it.
You're probably right, actually. You're probably spot on with that.
He would never explain it to. It would just be like, Oda be like, in an SBS.
Yeah, sure. Exactly.
Yeah, whatever.
There's a lot of things that I feel like, because we talked about the SBS a bit last week, but I really feel like there's a lot of things that are just going to have to get SBS'd. Like the little details about Egghead. Who are these other people on Egghead that we've barely seen anything from? An SBS is going to tell us their life story.
Who lives on Egghead?
Who lives?
Who has a visa for Egghead? I've never got. Okay, it's time for my One Piece rant. I've never talked about this with you. look, the entire series, since the very beginning, there's just been this romantic, the Grand Line, and then the New World. And ever since we went to the Grand Line, I've always just kind of looked at the islands that we go to, from Whiskey Peak to Alabasta to, not Fishman Island, but, Dressrosa. Who are these people? Who's going there willingly? Why do these kingdoms exist? And like, how do the people, like, are they born there and just live their whole lives? I know like Water 7 has the trains and everything, but like, why would someone want to live there at all and not just live in like the East Blue, like the chill, peaceful East Blue, but instead live where all the strongest pirates are like coming to make a name for themselves? Like, I don't get it. Like, I've never understood it, and I've always felt like it's kind of weird, and it's because you have to have citizens. You have to. But even at a place like Egghead, who showed up? Who invited them? Why would Vegapunk want these people there? Are they people? What's going on?
So putting Egghead aside, I think they're just lab assistants. But putting that aside, I'm gonna put on my
test subjects.
I'm gonna put on my like I said, how many ethics? It sounds like he stripped his ethics out and put them in other robots. That's what it sounds like. But in terms of like, who are these people living here? I'm gonna go ahead and put on my Kami Pinko hat here for a second and say it's because they don't have the resources to move. This
like
is
the ones in Wano who left to go, and it's dangerous.
Yeah, it's dangerous, probably. We learn about Zoro's family tree and how hard it was for them to get to a safe place in the East Blue, and even then they had to fight mountain bandits. It's and we're not talking about people who were just immigrants. We're talking about people who were warriors and swordsmiths and everything, and had marketable skills. This is a difficult place. It's probably difficult to get out of the Grand Line safely if you don't have power yourself. And power
Maybe that's Luffy's dream. Give people all like a subway to get to wherever they want to go in the world. Give people a free
metro card. Pay for their bus fare.
He wants to fly like a bird, fly his friends over the red line.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, it's just these are descendants of people who have lived in these countries forever, and chances are good that they just can't leave. It's not safe for them. They don't have the resources. And that's not to say that like the East Blue itself was not a dangerous place to live and navigate. Literally just one day out of nowhere, an angry fishman and all of his friends just pick an island and decide, we're just gonna do some gangster stuff here, and we're gonna.
Is that better in Dressrosa, where you have Doflamingo literally like
no, but again, Doflamingo gets away with everything that Doflamingo wants to get away with because he has power, he has class status. These, like I said, put on my old big communism hat here and just be like, no, this is a reminder that most people are usually oppressed by some kind of a force of power. Drum Kingdom is an arc about a lot of things, but what it's also about is that you can't just privatize healthcare for the richest guy around. Literally everyone else suffers, and that's the biggest thing that makes like Hero Luke so special is he was giving his care away out for free. That kind of stuff. These are things that are always sitting within One Piece in the background. I could go on forever about kind of how weirdly leftist One Piece can get, but I would say it's just it's easy to get on a ship and say you're going to be a pirate. It's easy to get on a ship and go join the Navy. It's easy to get on a ship and maybe go work in a restaurant or do something that's serving a higher class of people. It's very difficult, I would assume, especially for those living in the Grand Line, for those living in these very dangerous places. Maybe Luffy's dream
is that it's no longer illegal to be a pirate.
It's no longer illegal to be a pirate. And this is such an interesting thing about.
Everyone gets to be a pirate. That's Luffy's dream because he wants everyone to go everywhere. And he could do that if he was king of the pirates.
Well, and Luffy's definition of the word pirate is different than a lot of people's definition of the word pirate. Like early drafts of One Piece, like the Romance Dawn draft. I don't know if you've ever had a chance
there used to be two different types of pirates.
It was an ideological thing. And in the case of Luffy as a character, like that's still there. That's still very much the root to him. Being a pirate is not pillaging and hoarding and burning down towns and what we usually associate with piracy, what the Navy associates with piracy. For him, it's about living the way you want to live as free as possible, to be with the people you care about, and to enjoy life and discover things. And so wanting that for
Florida
other people,
could use a Luffy. Yeah.
have you seen that TikTok of somebody in Louisiana? Like, it was just a selfie video of them like staring, and the caption is me watching Luffy run to Mount Rushmore after feeding him gumbo and telling him the history of slavery in the U.S. Just like, it is like, that's a Luffy thing. That's what he would do. So maybe it is. Maybe he just wants everybody to be a pirate like him. Who knows, man? That's childish enough. Like I said,
it is childish. That is something where everybody would be like, what? The only rule for me when it comes to considering a Luffy's dream theory is, does it sound like something an actual child would think up? If so, then it's on the table as far as I'm concerned. Which sounds very like, that would make people laugh, but also people would be like, he's serious?
Yeah, that you just,
because everyone has their own baggage with pirates.
Yeah, and it could be something as simple as, then everyone can sail the seas freely. That's something a kid would say. Sure,
I like that.
That's a nice thought. I like Luffy. I like Luffy a lot.
I don't know if you wanted a couple things we haven't talked about yet. I wanted to mention, I think Zoro's costume is so cool. Like, I just want to keep bringing that up whenever I can.
He's got cool drip.
It's something. Also, I was just gonna bring up too the Stella or it's not the Stella. I always get it mixed. The satellites that go down. It's kind of interesting to me that like Edison is down, but it happens off screen. We already know that York has been turned to stone. It looks like the only Vegapunk satellite that's still functioning, that can still do anything right now, is Atlas. And unless I'm forgetting something that happened last week, I think Pythagoras is still kind of functional, but like still just like ahead. I don't know I forget if there was any development on that.
And if he knows who the traitor is, he is quickly running out of people to tell.
Yeah, because we don't see him in this when like Frankie gets partially turned to stone, and when that whole fight, I don't think we see Pythagoras at all.
We don't see York either after the bridge blows up. So we don't see
Stussy, we don't see Jinbei. Yeah.
It's and by the way, I'm glad that Oda didn't spend extra pages giving us everybody's status report every single chapter. We got a lot of that during Wano. And I get why we did it during Wano, but we don't need to do it here. I'm very glad we're not doing it here. We will see Jinbei next week, I'm sure.
Yeah. I'm kind of curious if Luffy's going to go up against S Snake at some point, because like, would he have the same effect on her that he has on the real Boa Hancock?
It almost seems like it has to, right? Not necessarily in a creepy way, because I know people have been weird about S Snake and Boa Hancock, and as we previously discussed, Oda's provocations. But I doubt it's going to be in the same way as because I mean, even Hancock's little infatuation with Luffy is kind of wholesome. It's not really played to be lewd. Not that that's ever stopped anyone, but it's not really that way. I don't think it's going to be as physical. It's going to be almost like a little kid crush on like your dad's cool friend or something.
Anarchy.
You know what I mean? Yeah, big ant. Oh, don't do that to me. Oh man, I'm over here like, I swear he's not that weird. But
yeah. And then I just come in and ruin everything. Yeah.
And just like, it could get that weird. This is anime we're talking about. I'm like, yeah,
it's just so interesting. Frankie has been on a string of W's since the time skip. I mean, dude has been like killing every fight. He's been like strutting right? Like he had a good lick in on Big Mom, didn't take much damage. He was one of the few characters after the raid he still had some cola left to go, as he said. He could have gone a few more rounds. His victory against Senior Pink, legend to this day. But here he kind of, he takes a little bit of an L, which was a nice little, I think, humbling moment for the guy on an island where I'm a little surprised we haven't got much Frankie development, considering we've really just sort of seen him having fun, being on this island and kind of observing things, but not really having any progression, which it is what it is for now, I suppose. Otherwise,
Bubblegun's right there. He's still got plenty of technology to learn. Bubblegun, it's a very good name, but it's good to see the Straw Hats take an L. I know that sounds weird, but it's a good reminder, because it's been a while since like collectively everybody's taken an L, or is at least struggling a little bit outside of Luffy fighting Kaido, because One Piece fans love power scaling, even though it's not a series that power scales very well. And we've been even here on this show, we've been like, oh well, how is Lucci gonna fight Luffy? He's gear 5th. And that's exactly how it played out. But it's good to have a nice little reminder that, like, hey, we have reached a very high level of power. We've accomplished some genuinely great things, but this series is not over yet, baby. So we got some L's to take.
Yeah, the humility is helpful, and I think it's interesting that with Sanji, we see him kind of really get heated here, because somebody scared Nami, right, and made her scream, and then he kind of just goes all out against this Jinbei Jr. And I think it's interesting that the S Shark model is paired up with Sanji instead of Jinbei, at least for now, just because there was that whole like gag where Sanji was like number 4, Jinbei had kind of taken his spot, which unfair considering Sanji took down Queen in legitimate 1v1, which is absolutely no small feat. He took down the third strongest of the Animal Kingdom pirates, and the fact that he took the Beast Pirate, one of the top hitters, who has a pretty big gap, I would say, between him and like Jack and Who's Who. Not to discount Jinbei whatsoever, but I think there's just a little bit of like bias for Jinbei as a former warlord, and the fact that he has Conqueror's Haki, and I can see why like the world government would be a little bit like, oh yeah, Sanji is number 3 of the Vinsmokes, number 4 of the Straw Hats, and he got a little bit of a humility check after having a higher bounty than Zoro for a spell. Yeah, and in the case of Sanji specifically, he's one of the wings of the Pirate King. It's important to remember that. That's not something you can just lose. He's one of the primary support systems of this entire crew. So 3 or 4, whatever. You can't discount the boy. You cannot. There will be plenty of times for him to be a rival to Zoro, like we all love, the true romance of One Piece. Is there anything else? I feel like I've covered everything I wanted to get into. Was any other rants, distress? No, this is it's one of these things where it's like, I'm probably gonna go back and read the arc after we get this reveal, to see if it makes sense, and then maybe we'll see how that plays out. I'm murder mysteries and these kind of like things they're really tough to nail. So I really hope that this doesn't end up like super anticlimactic. It probably won't. Not I'm worried about nothing, but bring on next chapter. Let's go. Yeah. One other thing I was going to say is like I enjoyed Luffy being like, "Who are you, Kaido?" And also, further seeing him just like switch to Gear 4th, and be able to go back to his regular form without the heavy consequences. That really, it wasn't that long ago that Luffy had the 10-minute penalty. That was as recent as Whole Cake Island was the last time we saw that, when he fought Katakuri. And obviously his victory there was a real step forward for him, and then him further conquering his Haki, no pun intended there, actually, has only made him all the more formidable. So yeah, lots to get into for the next chapter, which do we have a break next week, Travis?
No, we got another one coming this week.
Music to my ears. So we'll be back, of course, to recap chapter 1078 when that drops. Do you think we're gonna find out who the traitor is next chapter, or are you sort of like cautiously pessimistic.
Jeez, I hope so. I'm
so tired of this.
It's not even that I'm tired of it. It's just if we add one more weird layer to this, it's going to be harder to sell this resolution. Yeah. The further we dig, because usually One Piece mysteries are stretched out over the course of a lot of time, whereas the mystery is kind of the point of the story here. And like I said, the longer you do this, they're so hard to nail, even when they're good. The more we keep dragging this out, the harder it is going to be for this to actually land in a way that doesn't have us all go, okay, hang on, come on. Now, what about, like the longer this happens, the more red herrings. Let's just wrap it up.
I'm still salty about stretching out that it was Hiyori who healed the scabbards after the rooftop fight.
The
why
most
did that
obvious
have
answer.
To? People still had the whole it was an L, all that stuff, and it just took so long to bring her back or to kind of explain, and we really didn't get a good payoff for that, in my opinion.
I will say that I sometimes, and this is just personal headcanon, I have nothing to back this up, I sometimes feel like, because Oda has said before in interviews that if he knew how the internet was going to evolve alongside his series and what people were going to do on the internet with his series, he would have made a lot of things harder to figure out, and considering how hard things are to figure out sometimes for the series, I wonder if he does some of this pacing just to mess with, YouTube
to distract
YouTubers.
Us.
Yeah,
we're not talking about what the One Pieces this week. We're too busy talking about his little minor mystery.
Yeah,
it's all in the plan.
I mean, you look at his writing pace. Under the more recent, 3 weeks on, 1 week off structure. He's structuring cliffhangers and reveals and stuff usually around those breaks to give us a little bit more meat to chew on, kind of keep us excited for what's coming next while he takes a quick breather. That's adjusted a little bit. So the idea that he's adjusting certain mysteries or adjusting certain places where, we're going to reveal this here to not have some sort of impact on the discussion, I think it's a reasonable thing to say.
I'll agree with you there. So, all right, well, we'll leave it there. Until next week, thanks again for listening to Rookie Pirate Radio. Excited to talk about the next chapter with you, Travis. Until then, I'm going to set sail on not thinking about One Piece, at least for a couple days. I need a breather, so I hope you do too.
Yeah, I'm going to Pepe Silva the whole mystery again, and we don't need that.
See you, everybody.